Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is to help you create an ecosystem, an environment where people thrive. Look, if you're new here, we want you to do one thing really quickly. We want you to just click that heart, and we want you to like the episode, or maybe a thumbs up. I don't really know, but we want you to like the episode. We want you, during this episode, if you hear something, if you see something, if you recognize something that really resonates with you, or we say something that doesn't resonate with you, we want you to leave a review so that we can either improve or so that we can continue to amplify this message. Look, today it's such a privilege every time to talk to you, brother. And we're going to be talking about something today that might ruffle some feathers. It might ruffle some feathers, but I don't really care. That's why we're here, because we want to be able to keep it real with you. Look, the reason that your organization sucks is because of you, the executive director. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the lack of leadership in the nonprofit space. We're talking about the lack of leadership in mission-driven organizations, in higher ed and education, and why leadership is really the poison that is tainting the opportunities that are in front of you to impact people. Me and Dan have the privilege to talk to leaders every single week in our Growth Alliance program. And if you don't know it, it's a 12-week accelerator program that is literally designed to take you through a process where you're preparing your systems, you're proving and developing new ways of marketing, as well as we're helping you partner with the key donors and then propelling those relationships forward. So essentially in 12 weeks, you're going to be able to have the money, the systems, all of the things that you need. And if you want more information, go to jointhegrowthalliance.com, jointhegrowthalliance.com. But before we get that, we talk to leaders all the time. And if you are a leader that if I ask, what does your organization do well? Or what impact have you created? Or something very simple as, do you have an impact report? And you can't answer any of those questions. I can probably guarantee that the reason that your organization is not doing as well financially is because of you. Let's talk about
it. Kyle, you know I love hot takes. Thank you. Thank you for that. I was in a conversation when I was helping an organization once, and I remember the leader of that organization, someone said something on the fundraising side, and the leader said, "What's an annual fund?" I didn't even know we had an annual fund. And if we were on the radio right now, we'd have those funny noises that we could do in the background. We need some of those. But I just remember thinking to myself, I know who your fundraisers are. I know they've talked about this, right? I know they've had that conversation. So it's not about them. It's about you.
Exactly.
What are you doing? Right? If I was thinking about this, and I actually wrote a piece about this. It's not out yet, but it'll come out in the next week or so on my LinkedIn. And I know you're going to love this. The question that I pose is, are you a leader or are you leading? Right? Because you can be in a leadership position. You can call yourself a leader. Other people can call you a leader. But are you doing the act of leading? Are you actually leading people, or are you sitting there calling yourself a leader? And, my take, I had this conversation recently with someone, is they were like, "What's your leadership philosophy?" And I was like, well, accountability is really important to me. Empowerment's really important to me. Empathy is really important to me. And I told them, I said, as a leader, you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. I learned that when I was in college athletics, really early on at a round table with some executives. But I think even beyond that, I think it's really important to understand you only know your lived experience. I can't talk to your lived experience. I may not be able to talk to the lived experience of the people that I'm fundraising for or that I'm leading. And as a leader, you've got to have the awareness to say, I can optimize, I can strategize, I can lead, I can do all this, but I don't have the lived experience in here. I need to partner with you. I need to lean on you. I need to empower you, you being my team, my employees, my reports, whatever it may be. And as a surface level thing, that's kind of where I go when you think about leaders. Are you a leader or are you leading? Because you don't need to be a leader to be leading. And there are a lot of people who it took me years to understand that you can lead from where you are. Everyone used to be like, well, you don't have to be a leader to lead, right? You can lead by example. Well, what does that look like, right? It's actions, it's awareness, it's words, it's what you do. So you don't have to be a leader to be leading, but are you a leader that is leading?
It's interesting because shout out to Courtney Coble. She's the founding executive director for the Academy of Goal Achievers, an organization that's based right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're doing phenomenal work. So shout out to her. And I had the privilege of coming to an event. This was maybe a few weeks back where they were talking about a decade of mentoring. So they started the event with two of their key partners, and Courtney was on a panel, and then there was a moderator, which was one of their board members, and she was talking about a multitude of questions. Why did those donors, or why did those partners engage? And it was a phenomenal conversation. And then right after that, students that are in their programs were on the panel, as well as one of the mentors was on the panel. Phenomenal conversation. And one of the things that I recognize that came out of everyone's mouth, from the board member, from the partner, from the donor, from the mentor, from the student, and even from some of the audience, was Courtney, and how she's led by example, and how she's been someone that has continued to be passionate. And there's one thing that she said, which I love, and I just can't get it out of my head. And she was explaining this story, her number one story on leadership, where she was in 8th grade. She was a basketball player, and she was really, really good. And they were playing this team, and this girl fouled her really hard after a shot, and the girl like stepped over her. And at that point, Courtney even was explaining like who do you think you are? And then she got up and pushed the girl. Courtney obviously was ejected from the game, and the coach sat her down and said, you allowed your emotions to cost us the game. And then they ended up losing the game. And Courtney mentioned something. She said a quote that she lives by. And she said, it's the heat that comes with the seat. It's the heat that comes with the seat. And I loved it. I love that so much. And anybody listening right now, if you want to be a leader, there's heat that comes with that seat. There's moments where you have to be accountable. There's moments where you have to navigate those crucial conversations. There's moments where it will require you to be able to humble yourself so that you could do something for the best of the organization, not just something that you think is best. There's something that you said, Dan, a while back. You said I remember in our initial conversations that we had, you were explaining something, and you mentioned, is this a decision that is a preference or best practice? And it really stuck with me because I've never heard that perspective before. Like, am I challenging this person because I have a personal preference on how I need to do this? Or am I challenging this person because this is in fact best practice in the way that things need to be done here? And anybody listening, I look at leadership from 4 pillars, and it's a LEAD acronym, LEAD, LEAD acronym. Number 1, I feel like leadership, you have to be able to listen, similar to what Dan said earlier, because listening allows us to be able to have the empathy, the consideration, and the compassion to understand before we act, what data-driven steps do I need to make with my team's voice and perspectives and preferences in mind. Number 2, you have to be willing to engage. You have to engage with the problem. You have to engage with your team. You have to engage with the end user. And I find that a lot of titles that are leaders lead from their boardrooms and their offices, and they're not out in the communities. They're not out on the campus. They're not out talking to the individuals. And that's why they can't make informed decisions. The A of the LEAD model is you have to advance. I believe you're not a leader if you can't advance people forward. If you can't develop talent, if you're not developing other leaders, if you're not advancing and developing someone to be able to leave their role and leave their job, if you're not preparing the next executive director or the next leader in your position, I don't feel like you possess the qualities to be in that seat. And then the D, which is the 4th step of the LEAD model, is to discern. And that's one thing that you always say. Look, you're going to get information from all over the place. You're going to have noise from all over the place. But your ability to have discernment, your ability to know and feel and lean into that gut feeling is absolutely critical for you to be able to really make powerful, effective, efficient decisions. So that's what I would say leadership looks like for me.
I think that's good, Kyle. I was, when I was listening to you, I was thinking about some of the things, people say leaders shouldn't lead with emotion, but I think that's fake, right? It's similar. I have to think of the quote that we had spoken about. Oh, yeah. This was a hot take that I had a few months ago. It was that the people who actively share that they play the game in leadership and in work are the most insecure people because they're the most afraid to be authentic, because they think if they're not authentic, then they're not going to be liked. So they got to play the game and be fake. And, I think leaders should be leading with emotion. We've obviously gone through our career and we've had these opportunities to process pressure and decisions. And sometimes it changed with your title, sometimes it didn't, right? But that emotion helped shape our gut. And that gut helped us figure out, was this good? Was this bad?
Yeah.
Did this bring us a positive result, a negative result? What was that like? But we made those decisions not based on what other people thought, or maybe we did, right? And maybe you did, and maybe it had a negative reaction and you were like, you know what? I can't do that. I got to trust that gut. So you started to mold these leadership decisions about maybe what other people said, but then how you felt, right? Because if you make a wrong decision or a right decision, who's the only person that has to sit on that feeling and that decision?
Is you.
You're the only person that has to sit with that. So you should not change one decision that you make just because other people don't like it, or you perceive that other people are not going to like it.
Yeah.
That's not leadership, right? Yeah. You've been put in a role to lead because your gut has been told, and not in every instance, but a true leader, you've been put in that role to trust your gut and make decisions that you've learned from.
Yeah.
And that comes back to something that we both find really important, which is authenticity. And that means that all those decisions you make should come from an authentic voice, from what you've learned, and it should come off as you, because you're the one that's making that decision.
It's interesting because I feel like it takes time, though, Dan, to build that muscle, right? As we were all children at one point, and we'll all be children at some point in our lives. And as children, we often have been taught to just listen when we are given instruction and to follow instruction. And I find more and more in my own life, and the more time that I spend with my parents, especially my father, that I am okay with making a decision that you don't agree with. And I feel like I use that story or that foundation at the beginning because oftentimes we're trying to please other people's preferences rather being willing to sit in the consequence of a decision that we made that we thought was best at the time. And, a few weeks back when it was like the ice storm, I was getting ready to leave my house. And he's like going back and forth with me, Dan, about leaving the house. And I'm saying, look, I get it. Like, I get you have your preference and what I would want to do. And I ended up leaving. And, it's one of those things where this doesn't just start right now, where you just start as a leader, just making these tough decisions that no one cares about. What we're communicating here is if your decisions are rooted in values, because you have to know who you are, you have to know and have kind of a meter with a risk tolerance and what risk you're willing to make. You have to have some type of foundation. You have to have some type of accountability around you. Once you have those right pieces around you, and then you have boundaries, you have to have the boldness and the courage to make decisions, even if other people don't agree with them, that allow you to achieve the goals or the vision or whatever it is that you're going out there trying to achieve.
Let's just sit with that for a second, Kyle. Let's just sit here for a few seconds and let's think about that. That was tough, wasn't it? I bet that was tough for the listeners. I bet they felt awkward, even for 6 seconds, even for 6 seconds. But I did that because I think that it's important. You said it yourself. People are afraid. People are afraid to sit with their decisions. They're afraid to sit in silence. They're afraid to take on the decisions that they've made. I'm actually reading a book right now just about the psychology and studies and neuroscience behind nature and how nature is so rejuvenating to us, to the point of it can increase the white blood cells in our body, right, to kill things and make it better and change our literal physiology and the neurology of our brains. And I just think if people, leaders specifically, were more willing to sit in the decisions that they've made and understand the impact that it has on the people around them and themselves, I think that we would be in such a different place. And I think that so many nonprofits, if their leaders were willing to do that, they would be in such a better place, because they'd be looking at all these decisions and processing the pressure and sitting in the decisions they want to make before they make them, and thinking to themselves, who does this affect? How does this benefit us? How does this hurt us negatively? And just take the time to process that. And we talk about culture, right? We need to exemplify that culture. And that's what we're trying to do, right? Because exemplifying that culture is exactly how it becomes contagious and other people see it. And we set that precedent.
You know, it's interesting because one of the most powerful decisions I find that nonprofits don't make is that they don't invest in their nonprofits and they don't invest in their leaders. And one of the flagship programs that we have at the Culture Lab that me and Dan lead is the Growth Alliance. And we believe, and I definitely believe, that that is the best investment that you will make this season. And the second best investment that you will make this season is to register for the Contagious Culture Conference. And why we believe those are the best two decisions that you can make right now. Number one is, in the Growth Alliance, you're going to be given a lot of different things. You're going to be able to have two proven experts that allow you to unpack, reveal, rebuild, grow, and scale your organization. You're going to have the receivables, you're going to have the downloadables, yes, to help you sustain your fundraising, to help you sustain and expand your capacity as a leader. You're going to have those different things, but you're going to be utilizing a 6-step proven method that has helped hundreds, if not thousands of people understand their organizational story and how they can use that story to be able to monetize and magnify their overall mission. It's a framework that has made thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for organizations across literally the world. And then you're going to have direct access. And that access piece is important because you're going to have direct access to funders, to capital, for opportunities to produce earned revenue, and opportunities to even get on stage at the Contagious Culture Conference and pitch in front of major organizations that can fund a program, a pilot, or an initiative, or allow you to hire that individual to be able to grow your organization. That's why you need to say yes today to the Growth Alliance. You said yes and you watched this episode. You listened to this episode. But we're asking you to say 2 more yeses, just 2 more. We're asking you to go to jointhegrowthalliance.com, jointhegrowthalliance.com, and make the decision to invest in your leader. And if you're a person that's a leader that needs to invest in another leader, go invest in that person. And then the second decision, we want you to go to spreadcontagiousculture.com. Spreadcontagiousculture.com and register yourself or your team for the Contagious Culture Conference that's coming up in October of this year. Dan, what are your thoughts?
You know, I tell everyone, Kyle, the work that we're doing, I've been around a lot of people for the last decade plus, and your framework and what you've done from your previous life before getting into this, and it is incredible. Like, I think it's really special. I think it's easy to understand. We've seen it in the Growth Lab. We've seen it in our first Growth Alliance kind of intro meeting, where these nonprofits were, where they started, where they are now. And it's not just regurgitating things.
Yeah.
Like, they're actually learning how to formulate their brand. They're learning who they should be reaching out to. And not even that, they've taken the advice. Taken the advice. We literally made the advice. We were like, who are you looking at? You know, you were a track athlete in college, and we were like, you should look at AAU teams. Boom. 3 weeks later, one of the people that's in the group with us, one of our people, she reached out, and now she's the official trainer of that AAU. Like, you come in here, and people come in and they follow it, and they understand it, and they take action on it. And that's it, right? And that's the same thing that we want to put to in that conference. And I don't really know any conferences that do that. Mm-hmm. I've been to a good deal of conferences, and it always fizzles out for people. But we want to give people the opportunity at that conference to work directly at it. Spread Contagious Culture Conference, right? .com. That is, we want people to go there and learn and actually work on these things, get opportunity with professionals they wouldn't get otherwise. This is a really special thing that we're creating, and we want people to get in the Growth Alliance too, so they can build that up, and then they can get on stage and they can pitch to people, and they can build that network. Just like we talked about with me, just like we've talked about with you and other people, sometimes people just need one opportunity.
Just one.
That's it. And we want to create that.
The belief you have comes from clarity. Remember that. The belief that you have comes from clarity. So we want you to start with the why. And once you have that why, because you know it, once you have that why, the belief is so much. And you can't expand confident results from a confused mind. Go to jointhegrowthalliance.com. Go to spreadcontagiousculture.com. And we thank you for listening to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. One of the questions that we want to ask you today: how are you spreading contagious culture? Remember this: the energy you bring is the culture you create. Go make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.